What is your fertile window and what do I want you to know? Hi friends, today I want to talk all about your fertile window and what you need to know if you are trying to get pregnant. I am Dr. Natalie Crawford. I am a fertility doctor. I am board certified in both OBGYN and reproductive endocrinology. And today I just want to break down the basics about timing intercourse if you're trying to get pregnant. This channel exists so that we can talk about fertility health and your body and reproductive health, and I would love it if you would subscribe and stick around. If we're going to talk about the fertile window and ovulation, you need to know about your cycle. That is step number one. So this is not the first time I've talked about the menstrual cycle, but I'm going to go over it again so that we're all on the same page. So if we think about what happens in a normal month, what will happen is I want you to imagine inside the ovary, there's a vault where all your eggs are kept. Yes, if you're not new, you've heard this analogy before. But I want you to think about you're born with all the eggs you're ever going to have. Eggs come out of your vault, and when the vault is empty, you're in menopause. But actually what happens is a group of eggs all come out of the vault. Each egg grows inside a follicle, which is a small fluid-filled structure seen on ultrasound. The brain sends out follicle-stimulating hormone, or FSH. FSH stimulates a follicle to grow. As that follicle grows, the egg matures. It makes estrogen, a high enough estrogen for a prolonged period of time. 200 picograms per milliliter tells the brain to then send out a surge of LH. That is the trigger. Oh, we've had 200 picograms of estrogen around for over 50 hours. It's a very specific amount. That's enough to tell our brain there must be a mature egg there because the brain can't see what's happening in the ovary. Brain then sends out a surge of luteinizing hormone, or LH, which triggers the follicle to rupture. The egg is released. Follicle then heals back up and forms a cyst called the corpus luteum, which makes progesterone equal to LH pulses from the brain. If a pregnancy implants, that little pregnancy starts making HCG, and HCG stimulates a more constant production of progesterone. If that pregnancy does not implant, corpus luteum can only live for about 12 days. It dies, progesterone drops, you get a period. This is what is happening inside your body. And so one really interesting thing is that the egg only lives for 24 hours. That is the opportunity it has to become fertilized by sperm. Egg is released, has to be captured by the fallopian tube, and egg and sperm must meet and fertilize in the fallopian tube. A little embryo will develop over the next 5 to 6 days until it arrives in the uterus as a blastocyst, and that can implant. So you need sperm to be arriving at the time of ovulation, on ovulation day, or they're a little bit early waiting for the egg. That is what the fertile window or tracking your cycle or any of these methods of fertility awareness, that's what they are all trying to do. So if we're going to be really concise, what the fertile window means is it is the 5 days preceding and then the day of ovulation. So 6 total days ending on the day of ovulation. This is because sperm could live at maximum up to 5 days in the female reproductive tract. It doesn't all live that long, so I think it's really important to know that some sperm could live there, but usually sperm quickly moves through the uterus and the tubes and into the peritoneal cavity. So if there's no egg in process, it just swims on out and it's gone. Some sperm will sit and wait around. So the fertile window are the only days you have available to get pregnant. And so that is really what we're trying to think about. The day that you're ovulating, the 24 hours from the moment the egg is released, and the 5 days kind of preceding that. So that's what your fertile window is. Number one, a way to track can be with an app. So if you have an app that you track your cycle with, what we know that you ovulate is a mathematical equation based on the app. So the app uses the fact that a luteal phase, usually a period comes about 14 days from ovulation day. So what the app will do is you put in how long your average cycle is, and it subtracts 14 days. That's what the app is doing. Now, if you input more cycles, and then you tell it the next month it's 33 days, and then it's 35, and then it's 29, it's going to start taking the average of these for where it shifts your fertile window. Very important to know that may not be your fertile window unless your periods are always the same. Therefore, the math equation can be really consistent. It may not actually be detecting your fertile window, but it's just math. That's what we used to do with our planners also. We would kind of just count backwards, just math equation. Another way to detect a more precise fertile window could be by using an ovulation predictor kit, and I have an entire video on that. OPKs are a urinary kit meant to detect the LH surge from the brain. So I like to tell people to use these one time per day between about 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. OPKs are checking for LH and it is released in pulses, but it's released from the brain in the early morning, has to filter and get into your kidneys. So it may not be there if you get up at 5 a.m. like I do. You might have to wait until later in the day. It's only detecting the surge. And so then remember the entire luteal phase, it can surge on and off. And so don't take any more after you get your first positive. When you get a positive, it's the day before you ovulate. So the two top days to time thing is going to be the day of the positive and then the next day. Another way is basal body temperature. Now, basal body temperature, there's a lot of apps and other devices, technology that's trying to measure your temperature. And I'm not saying they're bad, but none of them are truly predictive. So your temperature rises after a corpus luteum is made when it's making progesterone. This is always after you have ovulated. So if you are using a basal body temperature measurement and you get a temperature rise, it is just confirming that you did in fact ovulate. Now, it is a minutia of a temperature rise. So we're talking about like 0.4 degrees Fahrenheit that happens when your body starts making progesterone. And if you don't measure it in the exact same circumstance every single day at the same time, you might miss it or not get a surge or get an early one. And so I used to really hate BBT because it used to be done on graph paper. Now that you can like buy a bracelet or tap into some other device, it's not as painful. But again, I like predictive measures, like something you can do something about. And by the time you get to your BBT, it's not really changing anything. Same with day number 21 progesterone or progesterone strips that are now, you can buy them and pee on them to make sure you ovulated. There's no need to confirm you ovulated. A big misnomer is that you need enough progesterone in the luteal phase. Again, because LH is being secreted in pulses, therefore the corpus luteum is making progesterone in pulses, you're going to get varying levels anywhere from 3 to 40 nanograms of progesterone throughout the entire luteal phase. Yes, when you get pregnant and you have constant stimulation, you should have a higher progesterone level. And yes, progesterone levels in pregnancy have been shown to be predictive of outcome. However, pregnancy is not the luteal phase, and we don't need to be taking pregnancy data and applying it to the luteal phase and then thinking we have a problem that we do not have. The reason why we used to check a day 21 progesterone was that an average cycle length was 28 days, and if you checked a progesterone approximately 1 week after ovulation and it was anything over 3, you ovulated. The point of the test is, did you ovulate, yes or no? Dichotomous question, not a quantitative test. So I don't love these post-progesterone levels. I think there's better, more predictive ways. It can be confirmatory if you never got an OPK, but you had symptoms, or if your doctor is monitoring you for treatment. That is one way to see if the treatment was working. Another way to test in your fertile window is to check cervical mucus. So anybody who's been around knows that I like this option because it is free and simple. You take 2 fingers, you put them inside, you get a pie close to your cervix, pull it out, and you stretch. And if you get egg white sticky stuff, you know it when you see it. That's called your type 4. That is the day of ovulation. The stickiness comes from those really high estrogen levels. That I usually recommend starting, about 5 days before you think you're going to ovulate. So if you have a normal 28, 29 day cycle, I usually say start checking your ovulation predictor kits or your cervical mucus around day 10. It's predictive. Check it every day. When you get a positive test, then you know for type 4 cervical mucus, that's the day to have intercourse. For an OPK, have intercourse that day and the next day. Another way is to forget checking cervical mucus and forget checking OPKs because your period is irregular. So you just do the math and you say, hey, okay, starting around day 10 or 11, we're gonna have intercourse every other day. Sperm can live for more than 1 day. There'll be some in the reproductive tract for when an egg is released, and we'll do that for about a week and we'll capture it, right? So if you're having intercourse every other day from day 10 to like day 18, you've given multiple opportunities for sperm and egg to come together. Now, in an interesting study that was published in Fertility and Sterility, which is one of the big journals that we love, looked at chance of conception based on what day you had intercourse compared to when you ovulate. And now, caveat, all this data came from an app. So this is inputting where your ovulation day fell based on those cycles. And if you input a positive OPK or something, it would believe it if you said, this is my ovulation day. Otherwise, it would use whatever the app calculated. However, you can see based on this chart, there's a much stronger probability of conceiving on the days leading up to ovulation, even more so than ovulation day, and then it drops sharply off. And so truly, really trying to get sperm there right before you ovulate is going to be the best method and how you use your fertile window. Last thing I want to say is that sometimes you can use this fertile window information to try to prevent a pregnancy as well, and that's considered natural family planning or the calendar method. The concept is the same. If you know when your fertile window is and you know sperm can live up to 5 days, you want to make sure you're not putting sperm there anytime when an egg could come out, even if there's some variation. So it does usually require quite a prolonged abstinent period and very regular cycles to be reliable. However, if you do have reliable cycles, this can be a good option for you if you're trying to avoid hormonal contraception or you want to monitor your natural cycles, but you're not looking to get pregnant. Remember that even when you use perfectly natural family planning methods like the calendar method, only have about an 80 to 85% protection rate. So if you are okay if you get pregnant, that might suit you. If you are an absolutely not ready to get pregnant zone, that may not be enough, and you may need to combine that with barrier method or other options to talk to your doctor. Thank you guys so much. I hope you learned something about your cycles and you can pass this along and share. As always, appreciate you being here. Hope you subscribe to the channel. Feel free to follow along on Instagram at Natalie Crawford MD or listen to the As a Woman podcast for more in-depth fertility related topics. Thanks, friends.